So you can imagine all of the logistics needed for Amazon, for Walmart, for all the other marketplaces out there. There's a lot needed, a lot of customized, process-driven logistics, a lot of tech integration is required. So we take care of that 3PL type work with that marketplace focus. That's another piece. And then we also we have the tech capability as well that people need with the integrations, the automations, the ERP work to make sure that their marketplace business can scale.
You mentioned a book, and when anyone mentions a book, I just want to make sure, is it the Weinberg book or the On Traction, or was it a different book? Do you recall?
Yeah, Traction is one of them. That's right. And then Scaling Up, the book is written by Vern Harnish.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. All right. And I'm sure you're going to leverage AI commerce as a backdrop for some of my future questions, but tell us a little bit, if you don't mind, more about Thrasio.
Yeah, Thrasio is an amazing company. So I've been lucky to be a small part of their story, just working with the CEO there and with others on their team, their different departments, and trying to see where we can help. But they've just got an amazing business model that works. So for those that are not familiar with Thrasio, you will be soon, probably just in the news, as the company continues to scale and be one of, if not the most profitable unicorns that has come out. So 2.5 years or so ago, they started by buying a few Amazon sellers, and the theory was there can be some consolidation with these sellers. There's all these small Amazon or 3P FBA sellers, they refer to themselves as, that hit ceiling. They can only grow so far before they need bigger teams, bigger tech, bigger capabilities, and it's at that point when a consolidation can happen. So this market is so fragmented, as you know, there's so many sellers out there, hundreds of thousands of sellers in the U.S. They can be brought together. Now, a lot of people thought of this. A lot of people did not do this, and the reason a lot of people didn't do it was there are risks involved. There are risks that Amazon could if you were too focused on just Amazon, you're vulnerable to what Amazon could do. They could shut off accounts. They could change the algorithms. They could do whatever they might do. They could maybe sell the products that are working well. So there were these risks that kept people at bay. But Thrasio found a way to do this, and their model has scaled beautifully. So now you can see publicly their valuation is over a few $1 billion and growing very, very quickly.
Now, you mentioned the acquisitions early on, but now are they a source of capital for growing e-commerce businesses? Are they the type of enterprise that someone who wants to exit their e-commerce business would go to, or all the above?
Yeah, so they focus predominantly now still on Amazon, but they're, as you can imagine, getting beyond that. But they look for sellers that do want to exit. So if someone listening is an e-commerce seller, they've got a good business on Amazon. Probably it's typically a 3P business, selling through the marketplace on Amazon. Oftentimes selling through the warehouses, the FBA warehouses of Amazon. Those businesses are good candidates for Thrasio. So Thrasio is hoping to provide a good partnership to those folks that would like liquidity. They'd like to get some money out. They'd like to stay on maybe a bit for an earnout if they can to get a second bite at the apple. But they're ready to let someone else help with more funding, with more experience, with more technology and process and all those things. So it's a path to exit with a very, very good proven partner that has had a great reputation in working with sellers.
Any profile that they're looking for, a minimum in revenue, a certain growth factor, or anything like that?
Profitability is one key area. They look for companies that are 1 to 5 million oftentimes in revenue, and profitability that is strong. 17%, 20% in terms of EBITDA. So that's what they're looking for. Of course, growth is great. They want to see growth. Company, they are of course going up market. They're looking at bigger companies too, and they're aggressively going up market. And companies that are too small, they send to us to help them continue to build and grow value.
Super, super cool. All right, let's talk about e-commerce growth strategy. So I guess, I just want you to kind of give us an 11,000-foot view along the lines of like approach and differentiation. How do companies who are in the space approach an aggressive growth strategy and do it most effectively, right? There's no sort of cause and effect recipe, I assume you have, but you have a ton of experience. You have a lot of the capabilities, but at the end of the day, in terms of approach and differentiators, when we talk about e-commerce growth strategy, what comes to your mind?
Well, a lot of folks look at us and say, well, we can sell anything, right? We've got the capabilities, and it's not at all true. I think this is kind of what you're getting at probably, but we look for partners at Ecommerce that do have a great product, that do have a very, very good supply chain and differentiators. So if you've got a company that does have differentiators and does have a good product with a good supply chain, let's talk. Those are the perfect partners. And the reason is they're set up for success. You can look at the Amazon environment, the Amazon ecosystem, the e-commerce ecosystem at large, and see that the winners are those that have a differentiated product at this point. We've gone through this where you could sell other people's stuff. Maybe that was the first phase. And then the next phase was you could do a Me Too product and just knock off someone else's stuff. And now we're at the phase where if you want to be sustainable, you need to have your own design. You need to have your own product. You need to have your own IP, hopefully. Now, the more you have, the better. But you need a differentiated supply chain. So what does that mean? It could come in different ways, but a low-cost supply chain is critical. If you've got a great brand and you are paying much more to get your product than a product that is similar to you, you're not going to do well. The other company is going to be able to use that excess margin to advertise more, to drop price, whatever it may be. They're going to then build up reviews. Their reviews are going to look much better than your reviews, and you're going to your brand is not going to be as valuable. Their brand is going to be built because they have all these reviews. So you need to have that good low-cost supply chain. Again, to clarify, it's not low price to the end user. It's for a comparable product. Are you making your product at the lowest possible cost on the market? If everyone else is using robotics or in Thailand or wherever they're making the product, and you're making it by hand in the US, it's probably not going to work so well. So that is key. And then again, other differentiators like we're talking about with branding. If you've got brand power, if you've got IP, if you've got trademarks, if you've got some patents that can protect your business, that's great. That can definitely help. So differentiators are partly on the product, but it's also partly on the process. If you've got a product that has an app connected to it, so if companies are buying it through, or if customers are buying it through Amazon, but they still need to get this app to have the product be useful, and then there's more value like that, that's great. That's a huge differentiator, and that's also probably not very vulnerable to Amazon or other risks that are out there. So that's great. If you've got a product that has differentiators in terms of, if you've got a company that has differentiators outside of the product, that's great too. If it can be shipped in a different way, more compactly than a competing product, if it can be, if it's used in different ways, if operationally it can be executed differently, all these things can be great differentiators to win online.
I haven't heard you mention the word brand yet. And you understand e-commerce on a level that I admire. Is it that in e-commerce, there's an assumption of commoditization and therefore the differentiation comes down to price? Or can you win with brand?
Existing brands have an advantage. They've got a head start. Really, I think I would consider it a head start. When we work with B2B clients, for example, they might have a $1 billion brand to their market. That's great. A B2C company that we're working with hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars out in the market, they've got a known brand. That's great. They're going to have a huge leg up. That means they're going to have a higher conversion rate. So on Amazon and the other platforms, customers will see that brand, they'll know that brand. They're more likely to buy that brand. But now if you've got a competing product that has much lower costs and they're throwing a lot more money to ads, they're growing quickly because they're optimizing the page correctly, they've got good content, a good experience, good conversion rate inputs in different ways, that product is going to do well. That listing is going to rise in the rankings. That product's going to get more reviews. So if you're a customer and you see 1,000 reviews or 10,000 reviews on that product, maybe it's lower price and the reviews are 4.9, and you've got this great brand that you know about and it's got 5 reviews and the reviews are 3.7. Which one are you going to pick? And so we've got to think like that. I think a lot of times we get very, very biased in our businesses and say, yeah, those other people, they've got a cheap product, or they don't have a brand. We've got a much higher quality product, and maybe we do, but let's look at those reviews. And the reviews will tell us if we've got a better product or not.
Yeah, super interesting. So you've touched on some of these, but I'll ask the question since I had prepped it. What are the top 2 or 3? What are some of the most common questions, challenges facing e-commerce companies?
Yeah, I think one is how people have a successful differentiator. We've talked about that. I mean, that's one of the biggest. Another is how they have a good strategy generally. What should be my strategy? And strategy is made up in many, many ways. You've got channel conflict strategies, and a lot of times with e-commerce that's critical to look at. You've got operational and fulfillment strategies that are critical. You've got pricing strategies. You've got advertising strategies. You've got brand strategies. Maybe you have multiple brands. You need to decide if you're going to be selling on Vendor Central or Seller Central if you're on Amazon. You've got lots of decisions to make, and these decisions may evolve very quickly over time as the landscape changes. But I think one super common question is, should we be on in the FBA network? Should we ship through Amazon's warehouses? And a lot of times it's the most sensible thing to do. If you've got a low cost, small light product, they're pretty good at those types of products typically. If you've got a big and heavy product, they're typically not as good at those. If you own multiple warehouses and you've got or even distribution systems with your own trucks, now you've got some great differentiators that you can leverage for big and heavy. There's something called Seller Fulfilled Prime that we work a lot with, and Seller Fulfilled Prime is no longer available. We're lucky, I guess, in the sense that we were grandfathered in years ago before they shut it down. Even big companies like Thrasio can't get it. But Seller Fulfilled Prime means you can have a Prime badge while shipping out of your own warehouse. And so it's something that we offer to folks because there's a lot of reasons FBA doesn't work for people. They've got restrictions on how much inventory comes in. Maybe international companies don't want to send everything in to Amazon. They need it in a different location. Maybe you've got long tail products. Maybe you've got new products. You're not sure which ones are going to sell. You can't afford to take up all the space with Amazon, especially during the holiday season. So there's lots of reasons where FBA may not make sense. And in those cases, you need an alternative, but you want to have a Prime badge. So in that case, something like Seller Fulfilled Prime could be a great solution. So there's lots of strategies like that. In that case, we've got the warehousing and the staffing, and we can ensure that we hit the service level agreement metrics that Amazon's looking for, and companies can do very well in that case. But there's lots of questions like this. They're seemingly endless.
Yeah, totally. How are e-commerce businesses today thinking about growth marketing? On the one hand, marketplace access is huge, and being able to put those products on the Amazons and the Walmarts, as you mentioned. But then from my world, as founder of a digital marketing agency, I wonder how they think about insourcing, outsourcing, hybrid sort of augmented team. What are you guys seeing at AI Commerce as it relates to how folks are approaching growth in e-commerce?
And you're specifically talking about like building resources and building teams and capabilities?
Yeah, I'm trying to think through how to go from 0 to $1 million, $1 million to $5 million, 5 to 25 million, 25 to 100. And we come in, like me as a consultant, not per se only in e-commerce, because I've helped in a lot of different industries, putting those strategies together. So it is a hard question to answer because you almost have to decide, are we talking about SMBs, medium? But I wanted to ask you in general what you're seeing. So are people like, I need help with optimizing my presence on Amazon. I need help with content. I need help with SEO or paid search. And I thought I would just kind of pick your brain on that.
It's a fascinating topic we've talked about for hours, and thinking about the life cycles of business and what teams are needed, and what types of organizations work best and all this. But if we're thinking really like what are the constraints to go from 1 million to 5 million, from 5 to 10, it sounds like that's part of what you're trying to focus on. I think we do probably see some common patterns. I think there are people that get stuck at one stage because they want to be profitable, and I get it. Profit is required. You need to be profitable. You need to be profitable long term. You likely need to be profitable short term. At least you don't want to lose money. However, there are ways to test things very well and break through some of these constraints and be unprofitable in very small areas of your business, but still profitable overall. And so I think a lot of companies are held back by that. They don't know how to do that. But if we can, a lot of times we help them look at things more granularly. In Amazon and marketplace businesses, every SKU is its own business. You need to understand the P&L at the SKU level. You need to understand a strategy at the SKU level. You need to understand an advertising strategy at a SKU level, for example. So you really need to get in on those details and understand not just what is the revenue at the SKU, what is the gross margin at the SKU level, but what is the contribution margin, the variable contribution margin. When you get at that, now you can break through, because you can make sure every SKU is profitable. You can make sure every order, theoretically, it's impossible to do this perfectly, but theoretically you go towards making sure every SKU and every order is profitable, and then every unprofitable investment, you stop and you move that over to a profitable investment. And that's one way of thinking about it. And then also on the testing side, you can do strategic tests that are unprofitable. That's fine. But you want to do it in a very, very deliberate way and understand, here's our bucket of dollars for tests. And the bigger the bucket, the faster you're going to go, of course. But here's the test bucket of money you're going to spend, and you're going to spend $1,000 a month or $10,000 a month or whatever it is on tests. And it's not all going to be going out the window. You're going to get revenue and margin dollars from that, but that's the amount of money you're going to test. And you can look at a lot of things, test fast and get some answers fast, and understand how you can improve your long-term sustained profitability from those tests.
I watch a lot of Shark Tank. I know people watching do as well, right? It's always on, right? CNBC, it seems like it just keeps running when the markets aren't active. But one of the things that you learn on Shark Tank is that how much are you selling from your e-commerce business, right? Because it's going to be one of the highest margin opportunities outside of marketplaces where you're sharing a certain percentage. So 2 or 3 quick growth hacks, what should they be focused on in terms of improving their e-commerce strategy, direct to consumer e-commerce strategy?
Yeah, one thing that we are always careful of doing is never being biased by channel. We try to be biased towards sustainable profit. A lot of companies are focused on Amazon keywords or Amazon advertising or something like that, and they forget there's Vendor Central. Maybe Vendor Central is better for a particular brand, or maybe their direct-to-consumer site is better for them. But there's a time and place for all of these, and there's a target customer for each of these. So I think it's important to really segment the channels and make sure that each one is optimized, and then taking it a step further, making sure that there's a cohesive plan between them. So Amazon might be used to build the brand in some ways and send people back to the D2C site, or the D2C site might be doing some of that, or maybe just showing some good credibility with the brand, and then having people buy on Amazon. So there are ways you can work between them. Of course, Amazon charges a lot of commission. They should. They've got this platform with all this traffic and this captive audience. So we definitely encourage people to look at each channel and see how they can optimize each channel. Some folks, I think, make the mistake of saying, well, we don't want to play on that channel. And I think a better way of looking at it is a more nuanced approach. Like what is a way that would be consistent with our brand that would be successful on that channel, and which customers can we target on that channel that would not present a problem with other channels and would actually provide synergy or growth opportunities. I think that's probably a more prudent way of looking at it. We saw, speaking of Shark Tank, and we were privileged. We had a small group that had Damon from the Shark Tank speak to us, and it was just great to hear his story more. And you know, he's scrappy. When you hear his stories, building businesses, you know, he was scrappy. You've got to be. So you know, I think you know, maybe another thing that we see a lot. There's a lot of success in people that are bootstrapping. They've got to be careful. They can't be loose and make bad decisions and throw money away. They've got to be careful. And so companies like his and other e-commerce companies are very good at that.
Yeah, it's all super interesting. And to your reference earlier, we could talk about some of these things for hours. You know, when you were suggesting, you know, to look at it sort of channel agnostic and really look at the yield and how your business is performing, you know, as an investor, I always will sit down with an early stage entrepreneur and I'll say, hey, listen, and I try to see how quickly I could get them to respond. I'll say, you know, would you rather 50% of 100 million or 10% of $1 billion? Answer. And, you know, of course, 50 million versus 100 million outcome. And so, you know, when we're thinking about these marketplaces like Amazon and Walmart and others, it's like the business that doesn't accept Amex. You know, it's like, tell me more about that. Why not? Exactly. I already know that they have a higher percentage, but does scale matter? Or are you just trying to build a lifestyle business where you could run your life through the business, or you want to build something that maybe Thrasio one day will come in and pay you handsomely for? I know a really important area for you, Jamin, because we chatted about it, is international e-commerce. And we briefly spoke about, you know, I mean, like, how do you compete? How do you get into markets like China and India? But even more so, I know an area of expertise for you, and I don't want to say anything that you don't want to say, is Latin America. And so can you just talk a little bit about how companies that are thinking about international expansion, you know, how to go about it and where to start?
Sure. Yeah, I think e-commerce is interesting in so many ways versus other ways of doing business, other channels, in the sense that you get real-time data. Everyone knows that it's got a great advantage over others. Another advantage that people often don't talk about with e-commerce is it allows you to go into other markets much more effectively, much more affordably, and you can test these markets very quickly. So for existing companies that want to go test a market, they can start by sending their e-commerce department over there and see if that works first. That can work very well in many cases. You know, I think with you know, each geography is so different. You know, China has so much scale, and in a lot of ways they're way more sophisticated than the US. And for a company that doesn't have a presence in China or long-term investment in China or any branding that's existing in China, it's tough. But India is interesting too. There's a lot of sellers in India, though, that are willing to be unprofitable, and there's tons of money being poured from you know, very, very big institutions into that area that don't mind being unprofitable. So that can be a difficult market too. There's plenty of reasons to go in that we can talk about more, but as you noted, Latin America is very interesting. I think it's a bit of a sleeping giant. A lot of folks don't know how big Latin America has grown in terms of e-commerce. Excuse me, yet, and they also don't know about the players down in Latin America in e-commerce. So Mercado Libre, for example, is much bigger than Amazon down there, and people don't know that. And Mercado Libre has been growing and scaling, and it seems like it's in that inflection point moment to me, Chris, where it can just really take off. And you've got now logistics that are being covered very well by Mercado Libre. You've got the scale, you've got the, you know, the flywheel that Amazon always talks about under control, really. They've got a huge product, they've got great seller diversity, and now they've got the tech, the ad platforms, and the logistics now is interesting. So from the US to Latin America, or from China to Latin America, Mercado Libre is very strong. So, you know, we help with Amazon in Latin America, of course. And we help with Mercado too, and you know, it's nice too. It's similar time zones. You've got lower shipping costs than other areas, but just like any area outside of our region that we're working in, there's lots of differences. You've got language, you've got taxes, you've got regulations, you've got freight forwarding, importer of record. You've got a lot of these complexities, and a lot of the products that we use here are not used there. So you've got to be very, very careful. But a lot of times there are some amazing products that we've got that would be marketed very, very well down there. And so for that subset anyway, it's great to push them down there. So we love that space. We're definitely investing resources in that area, Chris. We're also investing a lot in B2B and of course in the roll-up space. Those are great areas to be playing in right now.
Yeah, super interesting. A former client is Flipkart in India. I worked with them early in their existence on SEO strategy. It was interesting to see both Walmart and Amazon try to compete for that business. It's also acquiring it. It's also interesting, just recently in the news, just in the last couple of days, they suggested that it looks like Flipkart might be going public. And so it's just interesting to see the growth. Because when you started out in 2001 in e-commerce, boy, these markets were so underdeveloped. I remember going to Europe, being one of the more progressive markets earlier on, and they felt 5 years behind us. Now, most of these markets have caught up, in some cases surpassed us in different industries. But I think this international conversation is one of the most interesting, particularly if you could get your product market fit right. You get all of the logistics that you were chatting about earlier, which AI commerce could help these companies do. You get those right. Now it's time to do the roadshow and potentially test other markets, and it could be huge.
And I'll just add to that, yeah. In some cases, there's too much competition in the US. If you've got a fantastic product and it's marketable in another geography, if there's too much competition or whatever the constraint is in the US or whatever your standard region is, it is okay to look abroad. And as you said, these other markets are fascinating. You've got in India, they had all these constraints with infrastructure, but now they've solved for that, even with people delivering on bikes. So many people, hundreds of thousands, no doubt, are delivering products on bikes. And in Latin America, there's been all these constraints on cash and credit card and the financial institutions that most people didn't have access to. But they're solving for these things. And so the important thing, I think, for people to think about is where are we on that S curve, and what is the time when we're at that inflection point where these markets are ready. And be aware of that. Like I said, my opinion is Latin America is more than ready at this point.
It's awesome. Yeah, I love the whole conversation. This part of it is super, super fascinating. In our prior conversations, it became pretty clear to me that social impact and philanthropy was something that was important to you. And I know my final question for you is really to just tell us a little bit more about your affiliation and or association with Tier 1 Water and USA Water Filters.
Yeah, one of our brands is Tier 1 Water, and we're excited about that type of industry because there's so much good change that can happen in the world in that area, for example, in water. And so one of the things that Tier 1 has done is given a lot back to communities in the U.S., with education and emergency relief, with filters and water as needed, and then also abroad. So, we've built wells and done whatever we can to help communities, and it is extremely rewarding to hear about the stories when you see that whole communities are held back because they don't have access to something like clean water. And in the case of clean water, the mothers typically are the ones that are getting the clean water all day, every day. And it's still not even clean, but they're getting water, so they can't do anything at the home. They can't educate themselves. They can't start a small business. And so there are lots of ways you can help. But in the case of that company, we helped in that way. And it empowers people and communities to be lifted up, which is super rewarding. And we're fortunate enough to be noticed by some organizations. YPO gives a Global Impact Award for that. But it's a small thing that can be done, and everyone else can do their small things together. We can make a huge impact. You think of the folks that are that are providing credit, micro lending. You hear about people that are helping in so many different ways, or products that can be lifted off, shoes that are given. Or so I definitely encourage people to think about how they can make an impact, and it can start at home. It's great to start at home and think about our team and our employees. Think about our local community, how we can help and give back, and think about some way of giving back that is consistent with your brand message too. That helps you achieve your mission.
It's awesome. Well, listen, I want to thank you for being part of the Beyond Local podcast today. For people that want more information, you guys should go to Ecommerce or Thrasio, and it's Jamin Arvig. Thank you so much for being our guest today. We'll see the rest of you for episode 42 next week. Take care.